Hey guys, a couple days ago I put out a video talking about the difficulty level of Monster Hunter Wilds from my perspective, specifically from low rank, and it's gotten a lot of comments. At the time of recording this video, I'm close to 500 comments on the video, which is more engagement than I usually see and get on the videos. So this topic was clearly resonated with a lot of you. I got quite a few people agreeing, quite a few people disagreeing. And it was a really good, healthy conversation. And I just want to say, I made a major oversight in my claims and discussions and thoughts about the game's difficulty because and this I'm embarrassed to say as someone who says he's becoming an omni hunter, someone who wields all the weapons in Monster Hunter, I completely spoke about the game's difficulty only from the perspective of the switch axe, not taking into consideration that the game's experience is very different depending on what weapon you use, how you use it, the mechanics that are available to you. And another thing, so I did not really, I think, clarify that in my last video. And also, I didn't really clarify the fact that I have not been leaning very much into the new mechanics of the game, such as the wounds, which I have come to learn really does make fights a lot more trivial. So another thing I want to address is some of the comments that came out from that video, because there's so many great comments and so much great discourse in some of these videos I put out that never really get seen and never get acknowledged outside of maybe a heart or a few comments that I leave on YouTube. So I want to take this chance to actually, I took a bunch of comments, roughly 30, because I can't answer all 500 comments in a video, to try to capture the pros and cons of the whole discussion that was under that video from the other day. And I want to cover them and talk about those comments in this video. So these were primarily chosen by comments that had the most likes, that had the most replies on it, or that I just felt really added to the conversations. And so if you have some time, join me as we dive deeper into the conversation of difficulty of Monster Hunter Wilds. And for the record, I want to stress, it's not a matter of is Monster Hunter Wilds easy or not. I think we can all agree it is the easiest Monster Hunter game so far. My last video was specifically exploring the topic and my thought that Monster Hunter Wilds difficulty feels just right in low rank. And that's a very different thing. I'm not saying the game is hard. I'm saying the difficulty was just right at that point. So with all of that in mind, let's get into the comment. And I'm going to start with the one comment that triggered the idea for this, which was posted. And I'm probably going to mispronounce all your names. It's what I do, and I apologize in advance. But this comment provided by Ryan Dugan, he's the one who, or they're the ones that pointed out, I made it through the difficulty rant, and I just want to say Switch Axe is probably the hardest weapon to use in Wilds. So while the difficulty for you might feel correct, you are also using a weapon that is entirely reliant on iframes and matchup knowledge. The experience for most players in low rank is basically never need to upgrade any gear or change weapons, experiencing your first close to challenging hunts right before you roll credits, get high rank gear when you reach the limited high rank content, and then raffle stomp the entire roster until you get access to the final tier of monsters. Switch Axe is entirely reliant on the new interrupt mechanic and perfect iframe dodges to deal with a lot of those final tier monsters. Most weapons are not. And it's thanks to that comment I realized, you know what, I didn't play enough with the other weapons to actually understand or appreciate the difficulty. I can say I have been struggling with the new Switch Axe mechanic, which is the offsetting. I've gone better at it, but it does require some learning about this new move and the timing, because it's such a small window and such a wind-up and like long animation to offset the monster. Once you do, you get a huge punishing opening, but it takes some skill to get to that level. And as for the other weapons, I don't know what that looks like. So based on Ryan's comment, fair, maybe my experience with the Switch Axe was skewed to a more accurate difficulty than a overcharged too easy difficulty. So continuing in the difficulty discussion, this next one comes from Mr. Bigglesworth42 saying, I'm torn on the difficulty in that I started with the Switch Axe and would card at least once because I was trying to use the offset attack or sword's new parry attack. It didn't feel good no matter how many explosions I could pull off with the wound mechanic, offering a speed run towards a zero-sum discharge into another zero-sum discharge. I swapped to longsword and rarely if ever cart again. Same for insect glaive and sword and shield. The difficulty of this game really feels tied with what weapon you play with and how well you play it than anything else. Most of the monsters, once you get how they act, you know what to expect. And I would argue, so again, supporting the case that every weapon's going to create a different experience for every player, but also agreeing here that in general, across this whole franchise, once you understand how the monster acts, it's pretty easy to then execute and make the fight go a lot easier. This next comment comes from DJ Flair 84. Here's a fun fact. This discussion has been going on since the dawn of the Monster Hunter franchise. I remember when people thought Try was too easy because it introduced monsters becoming exhausted in the first place. That's right, people used to long for the glory days when monsters never got tired, only angry and super angry. I think Try was also the first game where monsters occasionally paid attention to each other instead of just instantly aggroing you on sight, which was also used as an example. A lot of the stuff that people say is making the game easier is stuff we'll always end up appreciating anyway because it adds immersion, a tale as old as time. And so I didn't even know that this was a feature that was added. Remember, I started in Monster Hunter World and I haven't played really older than Monster Hunter 3U. I've dabbled a little bit in the first game, Monster Hunter on the PlayStation 2, but not enough to really draw parallels. I play it once a year. DJ Flair seeing this come over generation after generation, but I do think it's not black or white. I think that there is some valid criticism to be had on both sides. I don't think it's like the game's too easy or the game's too hard. There's some good discussion to be had here. And ultimately, I think people want to make sure the right message gets to Capcom of this is what needs to be adjusted in the next game because we all love this franchise and we want it to be better. And I think that's what's important here, having healthy discussion to make the game and the franchise better. Next comment from Silvera00. The reason the game feels easier is because of focus strike and wounds. Guaranteed CC and high damage, and they spawn pretty frequently. Honestly, I'm not sure what the CC abbreviation means. I'm assuming it's like some kind of stun or something. Will agree heals Silvera as I've started to lean more into the wound mechanic, which honestly I've never really I haven't really liked exploiting it that much because it does feel like you're just unloading a ton of pain on the monster for too easily. Like it's not a satisfying thing for me. But when you really do start exploiting the wound mechanic, it does feel a little overtuned to just create too much damage. Like I think if you're going to be really letting wounds pop up that often, either the monsters need more HP or the wound mechanic just needs to do a little bit less damage to the monster. Like I think there is some room for fine tuning that wound mechanic. Next comment here from Toxu Riel. Offset attacks are for countering. The reason it does so little damage and leaves you so vulnerable afterwards is because you failed the counter, and that's your punishment for messing it up. When you succeed at countering, it's much better. And then also just some side notes on other things that I was talking about in the journal. Nada didn't get lost. The path was blocked by ice. Thanks for correcting that. And armor sphere melting makes more sense in higher rank. I recommend ignoring it until then. I've seen this message. I was complaining in my last video about armor spheres being too expensive to craft. I've learned that later parts give you so many points that the balancing makes more sense. So maybe I didn't speak too soon. From where I was at the game, my opinion is valid for that point in the game. Next comment from the Cringe Prophet. Glad to have you with us, Cringe Prophet. Says, the only time I carded in low rank was against Jin Dahad with his ultimate move. I had no idea what was going on. So in the last journal, I hadn't made it to Jin Dahad yet. I have experienced this at the time of this recording. I'll share my experience with it in the next journal. But I have to say, I think a lot of people carded to that move. It's a little BS, but more to come in my next journal. Just want to acknowledge that. The next comment is from the Master of Hammers, Bonkmain, I assume. Says, difficulty is subjective in my eyes. The most difficult Monster Hunter game for everyone will always be the first one they play because they know nothing about the game and all its shenanigans. From there, every entry gets easier for you because just like the franchise, you two are growing. We're used to the daily routine. And for me, difficulty doesn't determine the enjoyability of a Monster Hunter game or monster. It's all about the journey. Example, Quemetris. He's piss easy, but also charming and full of personality from the cutscene alone. His equipment looks awesome, and his simple ecology still stands out among other fire monsters. Even if I admit some hunts are over too quick, in terms of enjoyment, it's the best Monster Hunter game. And again, going back to what we all love, everybody appreciates different things about the game. Some people love the difficulty and that's what they are living for. Other people finding a lot of enjoyment in the fun mechanics of the game or the hunt, even if the hunts end too soon. I have to say, Quemetris, now that I've made it to the end of low rank at the time of this recording, I think I agree that Quemetris has the best gear when it comes to drip. I just love everything about the weapons and the armor, and I still wear the Quemetris hat because it is the best hat I've ever seen in this franchise. So yeah, there are a lot of elements of fun. But for those who do like the difficulty aspect as their source of fun, some of that is lost there, unfortunately. Next comment from Medistro. I like the game, but no, it's not hard at all. If you take advantage of the mechanics given you should never, ever cart. There's healing everywhere, and you call the chicken and it'll pick you off the ground and you can heal, sharpen, run away. I believe by chicken, they meant secret. The chicken is what makes the game easy. I don't think people complain about low rank. It's high rank that's an issue. It's just easy. That's it. Just easy. I'm even using new weapons that I don't use against the last monster and don't die, not even once. So this is criticism that I actually was agreeing with when Monster Hunter Rise came out with the Palamute, which is equivalent to the chicken here. It does really nullify a major element of difficulty that Monster Hunter used to have. The fact that you can run away to heal, that you can run away to sharpen and all that on your mount or whatever. I would say that there is an equivalent in the old world where you could actually just go to another area and do the same thing. You'd load another zone where there wasn't a monster. You'd sharpen, you'd heal, and you'd go back in. So the mount kind of recreates that. Where I'd say you didn't have either of those is really Monster Hunter World and Iceborne, where you pretty much just had to leave pretty far to do any of that. So if the only experience you had is World Iceborne, I agree that any kind of mounting does nullify a lot of that difficulty of having to pick a spot to sharpen or to heal during the fight. I used to be a lot more against it. I don't know why it's not bothering me as much in Wilds. Like in Rise, I did feel it was just making things too easy. But in Wilds, I don't mind the secret at all. And I honestly cannot explain why it is. Maybe I've just gotten used to it. Maybe I've just accepted that that's the format of the game. I think it's also because I'm karting, so maybe it's because I'm also not feeling like the game is that easy to me. I'm finding other ways of finding difficulty, like trying to style on the monsters more, trying to use the offset attacks more. I really try to perform so it looks good as a hunt, and because of that, oftentimes I kart, or I'm just too slow at learning the monster's moves, and I cart because of that, because I'm surprised by a new move. Next comment from Wasabilai 9405. They say I think the difficulty itself is fine, but they definitely need more health. The starting monsters have Rise Village level amount of health. Rise has the reasoning of it being a portable title, so the hunts should be shorter. So it's kind of acceptable. But I can't find a justification for Wilds. The hunts don't really have to be punishing, at least the first ones, but they definitely should be a bit longer. This is a good point about length of a hunt, and a lot of people use the length of a hunt as an indicator of difficulty. And honestly, I could see both points of view. If you can fight a monster for 10 minutes and not cart, why fight it for 20 minutes longer? It's just kind of a suck of your time. Like if you've pretty much proven that you can fight the monster. On the other hand, fighting a monster for 20-30 minutes is really hard on the player's stamina, and you actually start performing worse the longer the hunt goes, and so the hunt becomes harder the longer that you're in the hunt for. I'm someone who has been on both sides of that argument, where I'm like, I really don't want to be hunting this thing for 30 minutes. I've been doing Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate solo in the hub, and those fights are dialed for 4 players for multiplayer. And I know going in, those hunts are going to be anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes. And I'm just like, oh, I don't want to commit this time, because if you fail, it's so punishing, because you're like, I don't want to go back and commit that much time to it. Whereas if a fight is, 10 minutes, you're in, you're out, you fail. Okay, it doesn't feel as bad. It does respect the player's time more. And as an aging adult, I'm all about respecting the player's time. I think it's a very fine balance. I do think for the progression of the story, it's better to go on the err on the side of caution and make the hunts a little bit shorter. And then you can get those 30-minute hunts more in endgame when master rank drops and all of that. Next comment from Anjuro. Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Rise Village was beyond easy. For me, it was my first Monster Hunter, so even the impenetrable shield of your hardest Monster Hunter will be your first can't save the counter argument for me. Actually, funny thing about that, Village was so easy compared to Gathering Hub that I was convinced Gathering Hub was scaled for multiplayer, which actually led me to quit the game because I couldn't find people to play with. That is how easy Village is. But yeah, I also think Wild's low rank difficulty is actually just about right. Not challenging, but not a complete cakewalk either. High rank has been very easy so far for me though. I haven't quite reached endgame yet, but just a few tempered monsters I have fought without even having good gear have been a bit too easy in my opinion. So another thing I can't comment on is a lot of people seem to be saying low rank isn't really the problem. The problem is high rank and endgame currently. And I can't comment on that because I'm not there. I just entered high rank at the time of this recording. So interesting, though, that Anjuro made a comparison to Rise Village. I honestly don't remember Rise Village being easy per se. It was my second Monster Hunter game. I don't remember. I remember saying it was easier than World, but I had no sense of like, oh, this game's way too easy. And I definitely don't feel that in Wild's low rank. So I'd have to go back and try Rise Village. And I went through that twice because I did on the Switch and then I did on PC. And it just, yeah, it didn't stand out to me. I remember making it to Magna Malo pretty quick. And I remember being pretty intimidated by that fight. So I still had quite a bit of fun in Village Rank Rise. But yeah, I don't remember it being super easy or anything. Next comment from Crazy L. Wilds is as easy as you let it be. I made the game as hard as possible by disabling my Palico and using low-level armor and weapons against the monsters mid-game and onwards, without upgrading anything. I carded a lot, and I am a veteran since Monster Hunter Tri on Wii. I was pushing my luck trying to parry most attacks though, but it was hell of a lot of fun. I made the game as challenging as I wanted it, and I also don't use the secret for anything in combat, while people are just spamming that mount to recover and whatnot. So this is a good point that I've seen also where people are saying, well, you can dial the difficulty. I'm of the mindset of use what the game gives you. I'm not really one to handicap myself, but I have seen a lot of veterans do this. Either like they do a HUD-less playthrough or they just go in naked and stuff like that. So it is great that Monster Hunter does offer you the option to really do whatever you want in terms of difficulty. I do have a preference of using everything the game throws at you, but if if it is too easy, then don't use it. And to be fair, I kind of handicapped myself unknowingly by originally not using the offset attacks, not using the wound mechanics as much as I could have. So unknowingly, I was making the game harder. So that's another way to get the challenge that you might be looking for. And even when I was playing World Iceborne, I did a lot of these self-handicaps without realizing it, of like forgetting to eat, forgetting to bring potions, not all the potions, but some things in my bag, forgetting to upgrade this or that. So that's kind of my comical way of making these games hard, is my ignorance or my stupidity just makes me do dumb things that makes the game harder for me. And actually the same thing happened again in Wilds, which I talk in the next journal with the final boss of the game. I did something kind of dumb there. So the next comment comes from the Midnight Night 2748. Comments about my whatever I was saying at the 10-minute 23 mark of my video. Says, points out my main point of difficulty being easier than ever. I'm not some great hunter myself. Experience, yes, but not especially good. Yet I find myself forgetting to upgrade weapons and armor because it's just unnecessary with how many tools we get. Palico and secrets save us too much, and wounds, perfect guard dodges, and offsets gives us too many damage windows. For experienced people, it's just not satisfying. And for new players, it's betraying their learning curve by not encouraging them to engage with mechanics. I had to explain to my girlfriend the importance of sharpening her weapon after watching her brute force through Doshiguma with it. Even then, she did it in under 20 minutes in leather armor and the base insect glaive. I mean, isn't that part of all of our experience? We all do something dumb, whether it's using an unsharpened weapon or something, and it's only when a veteran comes in and says, you should actually do this. So I would argue, again, I can see both sides of the argument here. I would argue that Monster Hunter has never been great at explaining anything. I've always felt lost. And the reason I got to where I am in the franchise is because I had an online community like all of you explaining the game to me through chat, telling me to go here, do this, do that. So I relied on a lot of that to enjoy the game and to grow in the game. Where I do agree that the game, by making it too easy, can hurt the player's experience, is I remember, for example, Anjanath in World served as a wall for many people. And it created an emotional response to the game, which I don't think we have in Wilds. I don't think there's a monster in Wilds where everyone goes, not everyone, but like newcomers go, that thing was scary, I overcame it, and I am like a hype hunter. I love this game. Like, having the challenge to overcome is the one thing I will argue Monster Hunter Wilds probably missed out on, because there isn't a defining fight that I can see where everyone agrees this is what made me love the game, or this was my wall and I overcame it and I felt amazing. So I think that they should be bringing that in some regards, even at low rank, because it rewards the player so much for learning the key mechanics of like, okay, you know how to use your weapon, you know how to make armor, you know how to do all this. And because of that, you overcame this wall. It's like when I went up against Diablos, which was one of my walls, I got destroyed by Diablos in Monster Hunter World. And that's when I learned I needed to like actually build better armor to take him on, to actually take more hits. And I had to be more careful about my positioning and my weapon use. And when I overcame it, I felt like $1,000,000. So yeah, it is stripping the player of something when the difficulty is dialed a little bit too low, or too many tools make the game too easy. Next question, comment from Chuchines7817. They say, I find too easy to be misleading. I help out doing SOSs for Tempered Arkvelt and Gore using Tank Lance. I miss Alatriana and Fatalis type quests. And people are just carting left and right with 70% mission fail. Maybe they made a lot of people complacent in lower ranks as they don't get cautious in the endgame and hope to out HP everything. This kind of ties to the last comment where I think, you know, the game has not done a great job at teaching players how to properly use everything, and over relying too much on tools versus their skill. I can't comment too much on multiplayer. I don't dabble in it that much. And when I do, I'm usually playing with hunters who are more experienced than I am, or as experienced as I am. So I've never really experienced this whole like being surrounded with a group of hunters that are just messing hunts up and making everything messy. But honestly, that sounds like a super frustrating experience. And if this is a consequence of the game being too easy, then I'm all for let's dial up the difficulty a little bit so that hunters are more ready when they are getting into multiplayer. Next comment comes from Umbra's Mercy, saying, I've not seen a lot of discourse for low rank difficulty personally. Some seem to agree that Tempered don't hit hard enough. I think they hit fine, it's just people are expecting the DLC level difficulty when that's just not a launch title thing. And again, those who have been in the franchise long enough have seen this come up time and time again. It's just the natural order of things with a base game. And why was I commenting on difficulty of low rank, which might be another point you're asking? That's just how I cover games. I don't, sink a ton of time into a game and then give a single review like most reviewers out there. I play a game and share my opinion as I'm experiencing the game, which I think gives a very different perspective of the game, because your opinion can change throughout the game. My opinion of difficulty will certainly change when I hit endgame, but I think it was important to share what I felt at that point in low rank. And I'm going to update my opinion as I progress through the game, as I try different weapons, as I experience for myself what high rank has to offer. So that's just the way we do things here at Hey Jay. And, it's important to set expectation that I am not a traditional reviewer. I am a opinionated guy that just says it how it is as I move along whatever game I'm playing. Next comment from Spiller Aaron 4748. Wait, I think I may have read this one. No, I did not. Spiller Aaron 4748. People saying the game is too easy makes me think the devs will take note of it and dial it up for the sake of difficulty to shut those people up. Look forward to AoE, DPS checks, and After Effects to simple hits. For me, difficulty isn't too important so long as it's fun. Look at Kirby games for a perfect example. And I love that this has come up a few times. People have said Kirby games are a great way to look at difficulty. For the most part, the Kirby franchise is known as kind of an easy game. It's one of the easiest 2D platformers out there. You can finish a Kirby game with a relatively low skill, but 100%ing a Kirby game making it to the actual real end game of Kirby requires a heck of a lot of skill. And those games get like crazy hard if you're doing all the optional end game stuff. And it's despite it being easy, though, I don't know if this is what they were referring to, but despite it being easy, it's still fun. I think that's more the point Spiller Aaron was trying to say. But Kirby reminds me of two things. One, yes, easy can be fun, and ultimately we play video games to have fun. I've always been all about fun. You always got to put fun first. And then the other thing is Kirby, I think, shows how difficulty can oftentimes be locked behind an optional wall that players can go, but still make it rewarding. Like when you're playing the end game of Kirby, you don't feel like it's tacked on or beefed up or juiced up difficulty. It actually feels like it's part of the game and that only good players should venture here. It's like the hidden door at the back of the store. No, wait, that's a bad example. It's basically like a room that everyone can see, and that if you're good enough, you can go there and enjoy what the devs save for you there. It's like having extra dessert. That's a better example. All right, next comment comes from, oh my goodness, some of these names. Barry Halls 47. Taking a stab at game journalists. They say, right difficulty for game journalists. In previous games, getting a sub 10-minute hunt actually required monster knowledge and hours of weapon mastery with a weapon. In Wilds, none of the hunts last over 10 minutes. Monsters need at least 20% more HP. Beating the flagship Nergigantian world probably took me over 20 minutes. Arkveld takes around 10. I probably got marginally better since back then, but I'm definitely not twice as good. Monsters just fall twice as quickly. I would argue, I mean, some of my hunts took more than 10 minutes. So what you experience is different than what I experienced. I also used to be a games journalist, so you can throw that label at me. I don't like it. I understand where it comes from. I think it's appropriate for where that term came from. But I don't really identify as a game journalist anymore. All that said, more monsters getting a little bit more HP would not be a bad thing. I don't think anybody would ultimately get pissed if you buff the monsters by 20 HP. So it makes your hunts a little longer. It's not a huge game changer. Next comment from Yuna Americano. I don't think the difficulty is caused directly by damage done and received by monsters, but rather the reduction in things like stuns and other effects on the player older games had, like World. There's older games like World. We're already at that part. There's so much less punishment on the player for mistakes, which is really great in low rank, but I've been finding that I haven't noticed a significant change in high rank, where I expected difficulty to spike. Instead, I find myself so comfortable that I don't even cart. I know my skill is much higher than older games, but it feels like there's very little challenge to be had in the game whatsoever, even at higher rank and endgame play. I will admit to being a 1,000 hour plus player in Iceborne and Souls games, so I do crave the challenge to overcome and master, so my perspective probably isn't the most popular. That being said, there's always been an aspect of difficulty to these games to some degree, so it feels to a lot of people I play with that there's no point in chasing the game if it's all too easy. That's one of the challenges with overcoming challenges, is where do you get your next hit? And I've experienced that myself. After I overcame my huge walls in Iceborne, I was like, where do I go for more challenges? And I went to the old world and I got spanked in all sorts of new ways. So I understand what you're seeking, what you're looking for. And I can see that it's not there in Wild's high rank from what I hear, but I really hope Capcom will deliver something in Master Rank or in the title updates. I mean, Capcom has been developing hard games for generations. You know, there's super hard mode in Devil May Cry, whatever it's called, Dante Must Die. I don't know if they kept that mode all the way to Devil May Cry 5. There's is it Ghosts and Goblins or Ghouls and Goblins? One of the hardest franchises out there. Traditionally, Monster Hunter, one of the hardest games. You know, I think Capcom is probably trying to balance the fine line of how do we keep Monster Hunter, our most successful franchise, accessible to the mainstream to make money, while still being able to offer difficulty to our hardcore base, which is loyal to us and will keep, you know, buying whatever we put out, but we got to make sure we don't alienate them. So I think they're trying to tread that line, and it's always better, like, please the masses, give the narrative story, give the base meal, which most people can eat. And it's easier to kind of throw in the hard stuff after, because all of us who are looking for hard stuff, we're going to be there. Like if they drop, I don't know, a Fatalis or whatever in Monster Hunter Wilds 6 months from now, most of us will have moved on, but as soon as they say that, we're going to be like, oh, I want that. I want to try that. We're going to come back in. So from a priority standpoint, I think those hard challenges just falls a little bit lower on the list for Capcom. That's my take. Next comment from Wolfie Melon. I just don't like how streamlined and easy everything feels. Secret runs you to targets, so no incentive to learn the map or walk around. Target always shown on map. Monster CC'd constantly by wounds. Monster parts really easy to come by, so no grind. Tutorials that constantly pop up, which you can only partly turn off. Non-existent ailments from the monsters such as stun, wind pressure, etc. Palico is so overpowered it does everything now. This is just to name a few things. Don't get me wrong. I love quality of life things, but it feels like it's too quick and easy to complete most content in the game. Again, I agree. I think I've hunted most monsters just once, and I've been building weapons and armor just using materials from that single fight. And I think that's dialed a little bit too easy. I don't think you should be able to build a whole armor set that fast. So there's definitely a lot of ways here that could be fine-tuned, and I don't want to repeat myself too much. Overall, agree with what you're saying. Bring us quality of life. Don't overtune it to be too easy. We're getting close to the end of the comments here on difficulty. I have a few other comments related to other things I covered in the journal. So this next one by Old Devil Tongue or Devil Tunge. It's several different reasons. The people who can compare it know what they're doing by this point. Many skills still carry over from game to game. Many quality of life changes make it feel way less clunky compared to Freedom Unite, where a monster can just look at you and you get hit like a truck. Bloodbath Diablos. An easier game means more people will become returning customers. We all can't have sweaty years of experience under our belts. Some of us got a life. And the easy base game is part of their business model to the vets too. So they can sell you the challenging expansion pack after a year free title updates of more and more challenges. That's ultimately what I was saying earlier. The base is not for the veterans. It's for getting more people into the franchise and getting the casuals into the franchise. And once those people are in, then you can dial them up and give them the goodies after. Next comment from Joshkins4923. I have solo ran Monster Hunter World Iceborne, Generations Ultimate, and Rise Sunbreak. Wilds feels fine. Honestly, we're just getting better at these games. There you go. Next comment from Arkvelt. First of all, we can talk about the soundtracks. Okay, so at this point, difficulty, I think I've covered enough comments for that. Great opinions, great points from both sides, and I think it's very important to maintain a respectful discussion. I think we can all agree that there's always room for improvement, and hopefully through these discussions, we can provide good guidance to the devs of how to just fine-tune their model and the game so that they can continue making cool games. So this comment from Arkville talks about the soundtrack. First of all, can we talk about the soundtracks? Wilds disappointed me a little. They're solid, but if I had to compare it to Rise was 2 steps ahead, much more memorable. I'm with you on the difficulty. I would say I'm a good hunter, not the top 5%, but behind that maybe, which reflects my achievements and when I compare myself to others. Low rank had cool moments, and of course it's not like Iceborne. People expected too much. Low rank always was easy compared to the later on DLCs, obviously. We all rushed through low rank in almost every Monster Hunter. There's a few more comments addressing the music, and I don't want to get too far into this. I just wanted to say I do agree with this. Wilds has disappointed me from a soundtrack perspective, where none of the tracks has had an emotional impact on me outside of the main theme. Nothing else has really stuck with me yet. And I can't say the same for World, Iceborne, and Rise, where they got iconic tracks like right away, and that got stuck in my head. This next comment from Vulcan Fox says, World used the old World theme for Rathalos only the first time you see him. Wilds just remixed that old song and simply made it its theme. This was in response to my note on the song played when Rathalos shows up in Wilds, how you hear the da-da-da-da-da, which is, the old Rathalos theme. And then adding to that discussion, there's also a comment by Lumi4178, saying, for the first time, Rathalos has a unique battle theme, and I couldn't be happier. So quite a bit of love for the new Rathalos theme. Thank you, Capcom, for making that. It has a great level of nostalgia and just really fit the intensity of that fight. Next up, we have a comment from Shane Thomas 6538 saying, why are we following... I think they were quoting me. Why are we following a kid that doesn't know where to go? Referring to Nada. It's almost like he's lost trying to find his way back with you being protection from any threats that impede his journey. So of course, sarcastic comment, throwing some shade at me here about my complaint on Nada. Completely justified. You're right that we are ultimately helping this kid, offering protection, but I will maintain that I am not a fan of Nada, and I will share more in the next journal. So while I can agree with your shade, I still stand by my criticism of Nada and just the overall choice of narrative direction that they went. Next comment from Bahamut 8199. The reason it's called Wyvern Milk, this is actually interesting. The reason it's called Wyvern Milk is actually just because it's a pun in Japanese, LMAO. The Japanese name is Ryun-Nyu, which I'm probably pronouncing very wrong. Ryu meaning dragon, when cow's milk in Japanese is Gyun-Nyu. So wyvern milk is just the closest translation, but it doesn't really work as a pun when translated. So answering my whole little rant in the last video of why did they call it wyvern milk? Apparently it's because it's a pun, and we all know the Japanese love their puns. Next comment from ArcVTuber. Love this. To think this fine gentleman was once resisting the call of the hunt. And I just got to say, you know, how far I've come. I think it's been 3 years, 4 years, I don't know, where I used to say I hated this franchise, and now I've come to appreciate it in ways I never appreciated any other franchise before. Or at least no other gaming franchise. And the final comment today I picked up from Kelbook1 saying, no Uthduna love. He interacts so well with the torrential rain and the zone and those final waterfall clashes. Love it. So I don't know if I've seen these waterfall clashes you're referring to, but I just feel agree. He's a majestic beast who really fits in his zone in the water and the rain and everything. I just feel like he doesn't have much to offer outside of belly flops. And so maybe I'm going to like him more in high rank, but for now, my impression of him is just he's a big floppy whale, and that's not very satisfying to hunt. So this is the first time I do a community kind of Q&A comment review. If you like this, I'm happy to do this every week. Just pick up comments from the video that week. Let me know if you want more of these. If so, I will keep doing them. And otherwise, I will see you on the next stream or on the next journal. And until next time, keep it classy.